Coming up on Jerusalem Dateline, heartbreak in Israel as the body of a Bedouin Muslim Israeli kidnapped on October 7th is recovered. Plus, continued strikes from Gaza, despite Israel's gains in recent months. And uncharted territory, analysis from Chuck Holton on the changing dynamics in the Middle East. And a chilling look at unfiltered anti-Semitism and support for Hamas in Gaza. All this and more coming up on this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. Hello, and welcome to this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. I'm Paul Strand, filling in for Julie Stahl and Chris Mitchell on assignment. Israel mourned this week after the discovery of the body of a Bedouin Muslim Israeli who was kidnapped along with several of his children on October 7th. It was thought that he was still alive. The discovery adds new urgency to the talks for a hostage deal, all while rockets continue coming into Israel from Gaza. Here's the latest.
The IDF announced it recovered the body of Yosef al-Zayadna, a 53-year-old Bedouin Muslim who was abducted on October 7th and killed in captivity.
It's a very difficult incident. The family's in pain, crying and screaming. They received the news with deep sadness.
The IDF said it also located findings related to Yosef's son, Hamza, also a hostage, raising serious concerns for his life. Reports said the bodies of two terrorist guards were next to him. The mayor of Rahat, the Bedouin city where Yosef and Hamza are from, said they had different expectations.
We had all read the names of the hostages that were published, and they were among the names of the living ones. We expected them back alive. Unfortunately, it seems that they and others were murdered, and this is a great pain.
Al-Zayadna was abducted along with 3 of his children at the dairy in Kibbutz Holit.
At 7:30 in the morning, they were captured. We saw photos, footage, videos of them being held by Hamas. Very hard images, very hard footage.
Hamas released one son, Bilal, and daughter Aisha in an earlier hostage deal because they were both under 18. CBN News interviewed family member Bashir al-Zayadna last year, who described what his younger cousins experienced in captivity.
They told us that they had almost no food. They've told us that they have been staying deep down in the tunnels. They've told us that although the guards of Hamas spoke Arabic and they speak also Arabic, they never shared a word together, never spoke together.
In a statement, Israeli President Herzog said, "Our hearts ache over the immense tragedy of the al-Zayadna family who received the devastating news. They have endured 460 days of worry, hope, and endless longing." Prime Minister Netanyahu said he and his wife had deep sorrow over the bitter news and said Israel would continue to make every effort to return all of our hostages, the living and the deceased. Julie Stahl, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Israel is still discovering weapons, tunnels, and terrorists in Gaza. Despite being hit by repeated attacks for so long, Hamas is still able to launch rockets at Israel. Most of them are falling in open spaces or back into Gaza, but one did hit a house in Sderot earlier this week, causing a little damage but no injuries. CBN war correspondent Chuck Holton explains how Hamas keeps their rockets hidden from Israeli forces.
They're going back into places that the IDF has already been, but they didn't find those rockets. And we have to explain to people how this works. Hamas was going around before the war, digging holes all over Gaza and making rocket launchers underground, covering them up with a piece of plywood and then a bunch of dirt.
Holton says Hamas then uses those locations for more attacks.
They go and in a place where the IDF has already been and they've cleared and then they've moved out of, the Hamas operatives will move back in there, uncover one of these, and light off some of these rockets.
As Israel keeps up its military pressure on Hamas, the IDF has faced international criticism for its recent attack on the Kamal Adwan hospital in northern Gaza. But at least one Hamas prisoner is admitting the terror group used it as a shelter.
They believe it's a safe haven for them because the military cannot directly target it.
The prisoner, who was also an employee in the hospital, said Hamas operatives transported equipment to and from the hospital and used it as an observation point and command and control center.
Inside the hospital, they distribute the grenades and mortars, equipment for attacking tanks to ambush positions and to underground tunnels.
Geopolitical changes are coming in the Middle East at lightning speed. Our bureau chief, Chris Mitchell, caught up with war correspondent Chuck Holton to get his thoughts as we begin 2025.
Chuck Holton, thanks for joining us on Jerusalem Dateline. Here we are at the beginning of 2025. How would you describe the situation in the Middle East as Israel faces multiple fronts after the beginning of the war since October 7th? Where do you see things right now in the Middle East?
Well, I mean, considering the tragedy that October 7th was, I think the Israelis are making a lot of positive changes out of it, changes in the threat against them or the various threats against them. Obviously, having done such a great job of dismantling Hezbollah in a short period of time cannot be bad for Israel. It certainly is. Anything that's bad for Iran or for Hamas or for, you know, all of their enemies around the world is good for Israel. So they have done a great job at that. And we kind of thought that the war was maybe starting to wind down and we might actually see a hostage negotiation soon that would result in the release of some of the remaining hostages and, you know, sort of a winding down of this war. But it's hard to say. The dynamics have changed in the Middle East now, and they've changed to such an extent that we're in kind of uncharted territory in a lot of ways. And so I think, especially as Donald Trump comes into office, where Israel goes from here will depend a lot on how that relationship shapes up and how we end up looking back on this a year from now is anybody's guess.
Yeah. You know, you mentioned Donald Trump coming into office. Do you think there'll be even a sea change in the military picture after Inauguration Day?
You mean the United States military?
Well, perhaps the Israeli military and/or maybe the U.S. military being involved in some areas, maybe Iran.
Well, I think we can certainly expect the fetters to be taken off in terms of what the United States has done to try to hold back Israel in their conquest or their fight against this threat against them. Even just speaking about it is sending shockwaves through, as Trump is speaking about it, is sending shockwaves through the Middle East. And I think that in so doing, he might not need to involve the United States military a whole lot more because the just threat of the United States military getting involved might be enough to cause things to start to happen in the Middle East that wouldn't have otherwise taken place.
Yeah.
So I think the IDF is going to certainly be able to more easily prosecute the war and bring it to a successful conclusion. And their ability to meet their original war goals of wiping out Hamas, bringing home their hostages, and all that are certainly closer today than they were before the election.
Yeah. One of the biggest stories of 2024 at the very end of the year was the fact that Syria's President Bashar Assad fell, and now we have rebels backed by Turkey controlling much of Syria. What do you think is going to happen there? What do you think of this new regime there inside Syria?
Yeah, it almost seems like the center of gravity in this conflict has moved north into Syria now, out of Israel, because we've even seen fighting between the HTS and the Lebanese army along the Lebanese border. And so we're seeing fighting between the Kurds and the Turkish-backed forces that are up in the north. HTS, of course, is sort of continuing its purge of anything Alawite, anything that was related to the previous administration, and at the same time trying to put on a different face and make it appear that they want to be a legitimate country. It's ironic because of the fact that you have this leader, al-Jilani, who is not elected in any way, shape, or form, trying to pretend that they're going to turn Syria into a Jeffersonian democracy. But without a doubt, I think the sort of unreported threat that we need to pay more attention to is the threat from Turkey at this point, because we may very well see a lot more fighting in Syria in the coming months and years, because the Turks see this as an opportunity to completely wipe out the Kurds, or at least push them completely out of the portion of Syria that they now control, which they call Rojava in the east. Mm-hmm. And so the Kurds are not going to go, they're not going to do that without some significant fighting. And right now, HTS is trying to sort of bring the Kurds into the fold. So that'll be interesting to see how it plays out, especially since the United States has actually moved more troops into that region. Yeah. We have now more than 2,000 troops on the ground. We're building new bases in Kobani, up in the northern part of Syria. And all of that is to support the Kurds, because we understand, at least on some level, that HTS is not all that they're trying to make themselves out to be. They are much closer to ISIS 2.0 than they are to Jeffersonian democracy.
Yeah, exactly. Well, one of the biggest stories that I'm sure we'll be following this year. Chuck Holton, CBN News war correspondent, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.
Israeli social media influencer Tal Oren is a significant voice in the digital space, exposing anti-Semitism and jihadist ideology on his Instagram post. One of his latest videos gives a sobering glimpse into how some Gazans think and how they might speak when they don't realize they're talking to a Jewish Israeli.
Since the beginning of the war, I've been receiving countless DMs on my Instagram from Gazans asking for help. And my first reaction has been, call me. You see, I want to know what people there are thinking, how they feel about the war. The thing is, none of these Gazans have ever called me. Until...
This is good.
Can we talk about your situation? What is your situation?
And in April, I decided to go to Egypt with my family. In the crusade, they not allowed to take my family and husband with me.
Where did you learn to speak such good English?
Yeah, I studied from Quds Open University.
What was the life in Gaza before the war?
All people in Gaza are happy, and we live in beautiful home. We wear beautiful clothes. We eat beautiful foods. Everything was amazing. We want to recover our previous life.
October 7 is good or bad? Sabba October.
For me, I said it's good, and they are very courageous. Give their life for Gaza and for us and for Jerusalem.
How can we free Palestine?
We can free Palestine by what did on 7th of October.
Are you happy with October 7? It's good for you?
Yes, I become proud of 7th October. I celebrate in 7th October, and we are proud of them. Yes, this is the truth.
يعني إن شاء الله كله رزق شهيد.
إن شاء الله.
Wow.
Hamas, for me, I love مقاومة. I respect why he fight in the last breath to kill Israel and occupation. Give Gaza a lot.
Of course, and Hania also.
And
Hania very good.
And Hania, I'm very sad when they killed them.
Haram that they. Haram. How do you feel about Yehudi? Do you like Yehudi or?
Of course no. Why? They killed our children. They stole our dreams. They demolished all our dreams and our house.
Kulu Yehudi, even Iraqi Yehudi, European Yehudi, Kulu Yehudi.
Yeah, and in our Quran, Allah told us don't respect the contact between Yehudi.
Yehudi is bad.
What?
Not good.
Yeah.
You love Hamas. Like Hamas is good.
Yeah. I love all Palestinian people. Hamas, Fatah, I love them all.
In the back of my head, I'm thinking, how does she not know I'm Israeli? These questions were so on the nose. I honestly didn't think this was going to go on for so long. So I made a choice to tell her who I was.
أنا مش عربي. أنا يهودي إسرائيلي.
أنت يهودي؟ جد؟
إسرائيلي.
I am shocked.
Yeah, I know you're shocked. You want to have peace with me or you want to kill me?
No, you.
But you say you love Hamas.
Peace. No, I love all people in Gaza, I said.
You love Hamas. Hamas is good.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
How can you be okay with Hamas?
Really, I said that because I think you love Hamas.
I don't believe you.
Look, you kill our children.
You also kill our children.
But when 7 October happened, I didn't like it. I really, honestly, I become proud of 7 October. I celebrate in 7 October. Look, I am a woman. I love peace. I love all people. I respect all religions.
Yehudi is bad, not good.
Yeah, all the people of Gaza now don't want Hamas control Gaza. We proud of them as Muqawama, as they make sometime.
You're proud of Sinwar. You're proud of Ismail Haniyeh.
Ismail Haniyeh is good.
They destroy your country. They destroy your people. They destroy your life. Sinwar is good. Sinwar destroy your life. Sinwar is bad. But we cannot have salam if you like Sinwar. Sinwar want to kill me, want to kill my grandma, want to kill my Israel is not going anywhere. Israel will stay here, inshallah, forever.
Wait.
The issue that I'm pointing to in this video is bigger than me and this lady from Gaza. It's a failure at the hands of the UN and Palestinian leadership to push their people away from radical Islamic terrorism. Arab supremacy is a real issue in the Middle East. We see it everywhere we go, from Syrian Arabs Kurds, to Iraqi Arab Muslims massacring Mandeans, to Egyptian Arab Muslims massacring Copts, to Palestinians massacring Jews. I want to clarify, even though this lady wants to see me dead, I don't hate her. She grew up with a cancerous ideology, and we Jews have good reason to believe that most Palestinians hold these exact same viewpoints. That needs to change.
While Israelis have suffered in many ways over the past 15 months, so have the country's forests and animals. CBN traveled north to visit an important park that Israel's had closed up for more than a year. Here's the report from our Middle East correspondent, Julie Stahl.
Less than 20 miles from the Lebanese border, Agamon Hahula Park is known as a bird watcher's paradise. In good times, the Hula Valley can host millions of migrating birds and thousands of visitors each year. Closed since October 2023, it's been very quiet, with no statistics on how the war affected the bird migration. Now things are looking up. After more than a year of being closed due to the war, missiles, and forest fires, the Agamon Hula Park is now ready to reopen and welcome visitors from around Israel and around the world.
It symbolizes the rehabilitation of the north of Israel and the coming back home of the citizens that supposed to left in the middle of the night 1 year ago.
Ifat Ovadia Lusky of the KKL Jewish National Fund oversees Israel's forests and is helping to rebuild communities here. She says although northern Israel has never experienced anything like this, hope is strong.
We have the evacuees people and the fires, and this site was closed more than a year. It means that thousands of visitors couldn't come to here.
CBN News joined a tour of the affected areas recently. The park's visitors center contains interactive exhibits, and there is an option to walk or tour the grounds in a vehicle. The war throughout northern Israel damaged around 5,000 acres of forests.
We had a lot of streams and springs, aquatic environments that were polluted, and open areas that were polluted by oil and benzene from the army vehicles. In the forest that was burned, we saw that animals were hurt.
Chief scientist Dr. Doron Markel says, although they don't know how the birds handled the war overall, the cranes seem to be doing well.
There are thousands of cranes wintering here as usual, and even more than last year. So the nature wins it all.
Itamar Katz, head forester of the Golan Heights, says the war has kept his crews busy.
More than a third of all of our forests burned. If we talk about open areas, we're talking 4 times what I just said.
Sadly, the biggest culprit behind the forest fires, he says, has been Israel's interceptor rockets.
They created so many fires. I mean, they saved countless amounts of lives. But if we were used to getting one rocket fall in one forest and start one fire, then you had 3 or 4 interceptors, which started 20 or 30 spot fires. It was a very different situation.
Often preventing them from doing their job.
We weren't always allowed to go to the fire at the end of the day. And sometimes we were just told, listen, it's too dangerous, it's too close to the border, and we just needed to let it burn.
Head veterinarian Rona Nadler-Valenci started to treat animal patients primarily injured by human presence when the Agamon Wildlife Rehabilitation Center opened about 5 years ago.
So it can be road traffic accidents, and it can be collision with power lines, it can be poison from agriculture or from various other things. It can also be gunshot wounds. We take in patients that have been injured, and we nurse them and rehabilitate them back and release them to nature.
Before the war, the center had been growing.
And then the war kicked in, and we had to learn how to work in a very different reality. So in the beginning, all of our staff, including myself, we had to evacuate because we're all from here, from the Galilee.
Thus, the center had to close.
In fact, we had to release all of the animals and hope for the best. But eventually, we just came back because we really needed to be here for the animals.
When it reopened, they didn't see many patients because there were no people to bring in the animals. Only soldiers in the war zones found them.
We saw a lot of injuries that are related to the war. So if it would be collisions with army vehicles or animals entrapped in fire zones.
Now KKL Jewish National Fund is shifting gears, looking toward the future. Valenci says they hope to build a new animal hospital.
A new hospital so that we can have an impact, a greater impact, and take in more patients and treat more animals every year and release them back to nature.
Markle told CBN News reopening the visitor center is an important step.
It can be a day of change, a day that we will start the reclamation and rehabilitation, not only of people, but also the nature. The key here is to study before you do, and when you do it better. We call it Build Back Better.
Julie Stahl, Agamon Hahula Park, Northern Israel.
Well, that's all for this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. Thanks for joining us. Remember, you can follow us on social media and access CBN content through our CBN News and other CBN apps. And don't forget to sign up for our email blast to get updates on breaking news. And please keep praying for the peace of Jerusalem and for Israeli soldiers fighting on so many fronts and for all those caught in harm's way. And as always, continue to lift up the hostages in Gaza in your prayers. I'm Paul Strand. For all of us here at the Jerusalem Bureau, we'll see you next time on Jerusalem Dateline.